much-needed break that we got from we were overwhelmed with technology, AI, and all of the magic of it. And I think now we had this conversation that came in with all of the, mind and heart and emotions in people. So quite thought-provoking. Okay, with that, it's turning out to be an exciting day. And the next session before we pause for the networking lunch is Cross-Pollination of Ideas, Accelerating Digital Innovation. Before we get into this session, if you haven't downloaded the events app, make sure you do it, because we have a Q&A interface there as well. So as you go along the course of the conversation, if you have questions that come to your mind, you can quickly post them. So in this session, we have CXOs from diverse sectors discussing the pace and technology shifts in their respective industries. Chairing this session, we have Nitin Rakesh, Chief Executive Officer and Executive Director, Mphasis Limited. Quick introduction to Nitin. You saw him in the morning at the awards segment. He has deep domain expertise in banking, financial services, and insurance verticals. He has strong customer orientation, large deal experience, and a track record of delivering transformative digital solutions. He also has an entrepreneurial mindset, focusing on launching innovative new service offerings in automation and beyond. He holds a bachelor's degree in computer science engineering from the Delhi Institute of Technology, University of Delhi, and has received a master's degree in management from Narsimha Institute of Management Studies, Mumbai. He's also an alumnus of Harvard Business School CEO Workshop. Please join me in welcoming Nitin on stage. I'm going to invite him and hand it over to him to introduce the speakers and the topic.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I need some energy, guys. We have an exciting session coming up. I'm going to very quickly, bring on my co-panelists, but I can tell you one thing I already know. It's going to be a hard act to follow the previous one. So please bear with us. We're going to take you back into some exciting discussion about disruption and digital innovation. Let me first invite my co-panelists, James Swanson, CIO and Head of Digital Transformation at Bayer Crop, Phil McKoy, CIO United Health, and Sebastian Gass, GM Technology and Strategy at Chevron. So as you can see, we have three transformative leaders from three different industries. I think it's going to be an exciting session for us to talk about. Before I actually bring my panelists on, I thought what I'll do is give you a quick context of what's happening in the in the technology and business world. And to do that, can I have the presentation up, please? Thank you. Am I still audible? Great. So let's talk about what's going on in business and what makes change and innovation extremely important. I'm going to show you some statistics that will hopefully give you some context and maybe shock you. And if they don't, trust me, I have more coming. One of my favorite, I know this is India and we should be talking cricket, but it's okay, just put up with me. This is a world-famous athlete and coach, Yogi Berra, who said, future ain't what it used to be. So what does that mean? Let's just look at some data points. Firstly, mind-bending. What took 75 years for telephone to get to 50 million users took 19 days for Pokemon Go. And I can tell you one thing, this is headed down further. I think we're going to go from 19 to maybe 4 or 5 days, maybe a day. It's coming. I don't know what it'll be, but it's coming. I run a public company. The next statistic actually scares me. The average tenure of S&P 500 companies is headed down. Short shelf life. Being CEO is a very hazardous job these days. Those of you who are aspiring to be, just make sure you know that. Those of us who are here, we've reconciled with it. What happens in 1 internet minute as of 2018? I don't think this should be a surprise, but just the numbers are mind-boggling. And by the way, I think this morning we saw in one of the sessions, the exponential curve of data explosion. What this is leading to is an explosion in data and disruption, because data is becoming the new core. 90% of the data was generated in the last 3 years of our existence. 52% of Fortune 500 companies have disappeared. between 2000 and 2015. Not a long tenure, and I'll show you some more data in the next slide. Somebody said, software is eating the world. I think data is swallowing it. Right? So what does this mean for businesses? This is what it means. 88% of the companies that were in the Fortune 500 list in 1955 are no longer there. Only 12% remain. And backstage we were having a quick briefing discussion. I think every enterprise is going through a conversation about what should we do to avoid this level of disruption. If you see the bottom list, the new competitors, they compete with every segment of the business, every industry, everywhere in the world. I meant it when I said it's hazardous to be a CEO these days, right? So what does this mean? What does disruption mean? Every industry is actually under the threat, as I said. It doesn't really matter whether disruption, what used to be from within the industry is now coming from anywhere else, from outside of the industry, and it's mostly technology-led, technology-driven. So every business is turning into a technology business. Every business is turning into a data and a digital business. Some just don't know it yet, and I think Phil's going to talk a little bit more about some concepts on that front. But almost every industry is under this threat. A very fascinating story, and I think there's a very strong parallel to the business world. Honduras is hurricane-prone. There's a river, and they needed to build a bridge. In the mid-90s, there was a bridge that was built to sustain Hurricane Force 5 winds. It was supposed to be an engineering marvel. I think they collaborated with Japan to do it. The city was Chotuleka. They were very successful because in 1998, there was a Category 5 hurricane called Hurricane Mitch. Only problem is the hurricane was so strong, it changed the course of the river. So the bridge is still there, but it's a bridge from nowhere to nowhere. What's the parallel? You could do everything right. You could engineer the best technological marvel, but if you're not ready for the hurricane that comes from disruption, you won't survive your best solution. And I think a lot of large enterprises are struggling with this cultural issue of how do you embrace change, how do you go from large, we just heard that a lot of 3, 4, 5-year core projects, long-term outcomes versus fail fast. How do you embrace that mindset? And this was a fascinating story, so I thought I must share it with you. Hopefully that'll never be me, but never say never. So there is change ahead, and I think the one other trend that we cannot not talk about when we talk about innovation and disruption is the massive shift in the last 100 years from what you see on the left is Ford Model T, mass customization, you can buy any color as long as it's black, to a point where everything is hyper-personalized. And I think I have a couple of stories that really, really stand out. How many of you here have used Netflix or Amazon Prime Video? Almost everybody, right? So when you log in, the system starts throwing recommendations at you. It was a recommendation engine, which actually, with the use of data, turned into a personalization engine. Now they show you a percentage match likelihood. You will like it 95% match, 98% match. Then they shifted left because they realized that the data really is starting to show some trends. Now they started creating content. And whether it is Emmy, Golden Globes, Oscars, you'll see a lot of Netflix and Amazon Video, Prime Video award winners. You know why that is? Any idea? Before they put money, they know what the rate of success is likely to be because they have all the data. They will know who exactly is going to watch and consume that content. So Netflix, at its heart, is a personalization engine. And they use that data in multiple different formats. Same for Amazon Prime, by the way. Amazon Prime is not a free shipping service. It's a personalization engine. And I think this consumerism trend is something that is likely to continue to take shape, and we'll hear from the 3 experts. I think I made the point. I'll leave this on as I introduce one of my co-panelists. On my left here, let me just get my papers right, is James Swanson. James is now based in Germany. He leads teams across the world using digital innovation and data science to transform and deliver world-class products at Bayer Crop Science. He holds a bachelor's degree in bioscience and biotechnology and a master's degree in computer science, both from Drexel University in Philadelphia. James is also a member of the St. Louis CIO Board, Washington University's IT Advisory Council, and External Advisory Committee of the McDonnell International Scholars Academy at Washington University. Next to James is Phil McKoy. Phil McKoy is a CIO at United Healthcare. He's responsible for establishing, leading, and executing strategic technology roadmaps and associated capital investments to support United Healthcare's business through innovative and differentiated technology capabilities. Prior to joining United Healthcare, Phil was a Senior Vice President and CIO for Global Loyalty Services at IMEA, a $2.5 billion global leader in loyalty management and analytics. Phil also served as Vice President of Target.com, where he was responsible for elevating the end-to-end guest experience of Target and other mobile platforms. Phil also spent time at Accenture, consulting with Fortune 500 companies globally, and holds a bachelor's degree in political science from Washington and Lee University in Lexington, Virginia, and a master's degree in international affairs from University of Denver, Graduate School of International Studies, Colorado. He's on the board of Reeve Academy, an innovative out-of-school program creating pathways to digital careers for kids in disadvantaged communities, and a member of the Executive Leadership Council. Next to Phil, I have Sebastian Gass. Sebastian is responsible for Chevron's digital IT strategy, enterprise architecture, and digital delivery teams. He established Chevron's data science program in 2013 and transitioned Chevron's compute and storage to the cloud via an industry-first deal with Microsoft. Sebastian holds an MS MBA from Karlsruhe Institute of Technology in Germany and a master's engineering management degree from Stanford University. So welcome, all three of you. I'm going to start with, with James and kind of talk a little bit about, James, talk to us about what digital means to your business and how are you driving and embracing some of the changes I talked about.
Great, thank you. So Bayer is an integrated life science company, and we really care about health, human health in our pharmaceuticals, consumer health in our consumer division, and crop health or plant health in our crop science division. And when we think about digital transformation, we first start what's the business strategy we're trying to enable. And you think about agriculture, it is one of the world's oldest industries. It is extremely important for the health of our planet. There's 7.5 billion people on the planet, going to 9 billion over the next 2 decades or so. And there's less and less arable land that we can use to feed that planet. And so you think about what we need to do to transform the oldest industry. Our vision at Bayer Crop Science is agricultural transformation. And so with that, we're applying digital. And we talk about digital not as IT or technology transformation. We really define it as business transformation to achieve our goal of transforming agriculture to feed the planet and do that in a very sustainable way. We've actually unpacked digital because it's actually a very overused word. If you talk to 100 people in this audience, I'd get 100 different definitions, I'm sure, about what it means. We've actually defined it. We defined it around 5 big buckets. One, around customer experience and customer value, really having a close relationship with your customer and create value for them. In our case, it's farmers and growers around the world. Second, it's around products and services. How do you bring new insights, data, capabilities to your products and new services you're going to create that creates value across the value chain? Third, it's around automation. How do you drive more automation and effectiveness so you can leverage those insights to do great things? Fourth, it's about new business models. How do you create whole new business opportunities through the insights, data science, and technology you can apply? And fifth, it's about people. How do you use your whole organization, not just the IT organization, to transform people to be digitally capable to transform your business and create value for customers and growers? And we link all of our digital activities to value propositions that we care about. It could be impact of cost of goods. It could be impact to the net present value of our pipeline in R&D, which is extremely important. It could be around net promoter score or perfect order or whole new digital services where we provide agronomic tools as we understand science, how seeds grow in the ground, we understand agronomic practices, and bringing those insights together for large agriholders around the world that are growing products or crops in thousands of hectares to small holders. If you take India, for example, there's over 120 million small holders, less than a hectare of land. We can provide digital insights to fight disease, to get better productivity in the farm, to reduce their input and input costs, and maximize their output and value. So we think about digital as core to our strategy. It's right embedded in the core of how we think, and we're transforming not only the company, but the goal to actually transform an industry to create high value for a very important need and do that in a very sustainable way.
Thank you. Phil?
Sure. So, good afternoon. Phil McKoy, United Healthcare CIO. I'm excited to be back in India. I've come here many times over the last 15 years. This is actually my first time back to NASSCOM since it was here in Mumbai back in 2011. So thanks for having me. It's good to be back. United Healthcare is a part of United Health Group, which is a $226 billion health and well-being company. We operate in all 50 states in the U.S., and we operate in more than 130 countries around the globe. We have close to 300,000 employees, of which 85,000 of our employees are clinicians, and close to over 20,000 of our employees are technologists. Here in India, you probably know our Optum brand, more importantly, our Optum Technology and Services brand. And we have about 30,000 employees here in India spread across multiple locations. And about a third of our team here in India are our technology team. You know, core to our business are really three things. It's clinical insight. How do we provide care to people in local markets? The second would be data and information. As you can imagine, as a large healthcare company, a large health services company, we have access to a tremendous amount of data, and how we use that data both for insight and to drive care is a core part of our business as well. And the third core part of our business is technology and the role that technology plays in modernizing the health system and modernizing healthcare. You know, you ask about what digital means for our company. Digital for us is about transformation. And we have a belief that technology and digital technology in its many forms is probably the greatest opportunity and one of the most disruptive forces for changing healthcare. And so it's at the core of everything that we do. We also believe that it's what allows us to direct healthcare at an individual level. It's so easy to talk about how big we are, how much data we have, and I'm sure there's some of you who would get excited about those types of metrics. But in the end, care is individual. It's one by one. And so we think the promise of technology is at the core of directing healthcare and redefining healthcare one person at a time. I'll leave you with three quick examples so we have time for your questions would be, one of the things that if you think about blockchain, we're using blockchain to try and solve questions around access to care and using it to create interoperability across data to give better provider information. And so we've just kicked off a pilot, we kicked it off early last year, with a number of other payers, providers, and technology companies to improve the interoperability of provider information across the U.S. health system. Another example I'll give you is something that we've just launched called United Healthcare Nerve Center, which is an IoT-based platform where we're looking across multiple devices. We're giving patients, an example would be congestive heart failure. We're giving that patient a kit with a Bluetooth scale and a blood pressure monitor, right, to access that information. And then we're building that information and sharing it back with our nurses to actively manage care and to help improve outcomes. And the last example, and one that I think we're the most excited about, something we've worked on for well over 11 years, countless thousands of hours of development we'll be launching this year, is called the Individual Health Record. And our intention is to roll that out to all 50 million United Healthcare members in 2019. And this combines EMR, EHR, clinical data into one consumable record that we will make available to all individuals and that we also make available to all providers that give care. One of the biggest challenges that you have is you show up at the doctor, and if it's a new doctor, he or she may know nothing about your background, nothing about your care. And so we want to create that ability through the individual health record that everyone has that at their fingertips. Again, we fundamentally believe that our mission is to redefine healthcare, not just in the U.S., around the world, and to do that on an individual, personal level. Thank you.
Sebastian?
Yeah, thanks, Nitin. I thought I would maybe share some perspectives first on the industry at large at the macro level, and then relate that to Chevron, and then also relate that to the IT function within Chevron. And so starting with a macro view of energy and resources, it's a fascinating time. It's a fascinating time because there are two change vectors that are hitting the industry. The first is the energy transition that is happening. And so, as a company like Chevron, we've been in business for 140 years. So we were actually founded before the automobile was invented. And so the change from wood to coal to oil to gas and now to renewables, it's nothing new for us. It has happened and will always continue to happen. But what's often misunderstood is the massive scale and the relatively slow pace at which that happens. And let me just draw that argument with a couple of numbers. There's still over 1 billion people in the world that do not have reliable energy. Over the next 10 years, there's going to be 100 million people every year that will fly for the first time in their lives. And although the progress in alternatives has been tremendous, out of the 1 billion vehicles on the road, there's only about 3 to 4 million of which are electric. And so the point here is, yes, energy transitions happen, but the pace at which they happen is relatively slow and is massive at scale. And I think the best way to drive that down is companies like us have a 50-year business plan in order to plan for that. The second vector of change that's hitting is obviously digital and the digital acceleration. I don't need to talk about this a lot here because everybody knows about it, but cloud, AI, and a system that is measured within MVPs on 6-month, 12-month increments is something that we need to incorporate from the way we roll out technology, but also from a business model evolution perspective. So let me talk a little bit about how that then affects a company like Chevron. So the last 5 years in energy, for those of you who have followed, have been a wild ride. They've been a wild ride because of commodity prices basically, halving. That led to a reduction in capital budgets we had about $40 billion of capital budgets in 2014. Right now we have capital budgets of 20 billion, so enormous drop in commodity prices. And at the same time, we had a shale revolution going on in the world, meaning that we went from major capital projects that took 10 years to investment cycles that took 6 months, and we also saw a major shift in the production worldwide to the United States to the unconventional shale asset. And what that meant for us as a company is a lot of good lessons learned. We titled it Winning in Every Environment, meaning that you really can no longer predict the market or you can rely onto the market, but you really have to be able to independently succeed of any market dynamics. And so digital, the way that we make decisions, as well as a culture of innovation are really key ingredients for us to succeed within this market context. What that means now to a IT corporate department is also, I think, very interesting because winning in every environment means two things. It means that you've got flexible cost structures. So if the market goes up, you can flex up. If the market goes down, you can flex down. And it also means that you are the driver for the digital innovation for a corporation. And so it's a massive change that's going from a corporate IT department that is familiar with projects and applications towards a modern engineering organization that deals with digital platforms and the like. And so for us, we have focused razor sharp on a top-down area of 5 workflows that we're transforming the corporation with. We have also redone the way we organize in IT from applications and projects more to a system of digital platforms that are held at the business unit and function level. So 41 digital platforms digitally decoupled via APIs that self-organize. And we're in the process of also radically changing our culture towards more transparency, towards more self-organization, towards more innovation. And so, to repeat this is very interesting from an energy perspective in regards to these two change vectors happening at the same time, but with very different speeds. For Chevron, that means winning in every business environment, and for an IT department, it means transitioning from a corporate IT shop to a modern engineering organization.
Thank you for that. Staying with you, they say data is the new oil. I'm asking you the question because you're in the oil business, but any sense on how data is relevant to you, your business, and any input and advice for the audience here?
Yeah, it is very relevant, and it always has been very relevant. So for us, the term of a digital twin is actually quite funny, because what we do is exactly that. We shoot seismic, we interpret what's down on the earth, we interpret that and model it in order to find oil, and then we model the reservoir. So we've been doing this basically all of our life. But I think you're right, it has taken on a new dimension. It has taken on a new dimension in regards to opportunistically growing data sources for the sake of training machine learning, for the sake of really being a data-driven enterprise. And we have seen big success in data science that started out 5 years ago with very specific data science applications, and is now really going to more holistic, integrated, AI that covers an entire supply chain and decision cycle. So,
thank you.
Very important from a corporate perspective.
Phil, you made a comment, backstage, and I'd like to kind of expand on that. You said healthcare business is a consumer business, and some just don't know it yet. So, talk to us a little bit about personalization, consumerification of your business, and how do you see that playing out over the next few years?
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things that's important to know about me is my background is retail. I was at Target prior to coming to United Health Group. And when you think about healthcare trends, in particular in the U.S., and I would also argue here in India as well, is in the U.S., more and more of the cost burden continues to shift to individuals for their healthcare. More and more of the choice for healthcare decisions continues to shift to individuals. And just like we've seen in other industries, whether it's retail or whether it's fintech, as more and more of the choices and the financial decisions switch to an individual level, you have to treat it like a consumer business. But healthcare today, especially in the US, is not set up to operate as a consumer business. Most consumer businesses, there's a clear product and there is a clear price. And healthcare is anything but that. And so one of the things that we have to think about in the way we operate as not only as United Healthcare, but also as Optum, as from a technology and a services standpoint, is how do we create greater transparency around cost? How do we create greater transparency around quality? How do we help people make better decisions by putting decisions at their fingertips at the moment in which they're making choices? And that is the retail model. And I don't think that's the way healthcare has operated today. And, retail, again, transparency of information is key. And so how do we make the data that we have behind our walls more readily available to people who seek care, and give them the information to make better decisions, to make better choices? And I think that's where the winners and the disruption will come in healthcare.
Great, thank you. Jim, we talked about the corporate action that happened with you moving to Bayer. Talk to us a little bit about the cultural challenge in applying innovation, and how are you overcoming it? What are the things that have worked well? Any advice for the group here?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we look at trying to transform a 150-year-old company that has a global scale, about 127 markets around the world, around digital. When I define the 5 elements of digital, what's right in the middle of it is leadership and change. If you can't affect the hearts and minds of how you would operate differently, I don't care what tool or data science model you apply, nothing changes. So we're working on our culture. One is around corporate clock speed. So how do you move and accelerate the corporate clock speed, because you're moving at the speed or faster of what's going on around you? Because technology is changing rapidly, businesses are changing rapidly. The amount of data, going back to the earlier question, our data footprint's going a third every year in the 2 to 3 petabyte range, because we're using that data to apply models, and we're using models to inform decisions. One of the key things we look at, if you're a grower, they make about 40 decisions every single season. What seed do I plant? How much water do I apply? What fertilizer? How do I reduce my input costs? How do I expand my output costs? We use data, decision, and science to inform and influence those down to a very personal level. We do the same thing internal. So about the cultural piece, how do you get a scientist that's been doing the same thing for a number of years, PhD scientist, agronomist, to think differently? We're applying models that accelerate and create new values. So for example, we'll do over 1 billion simulations in silico, matching genetics to what's called a phenotype, so a healthy root structure, a plant structure, and do that in the computer before we put a single seed in the ground. We can save 1 to 2 years of cycle time getting new innovation in the marketplace, which we absolutely need, using decision science and data, but that takes a cultural change. And so what we've been doing through the whole company is how do we think about those key business decisions? How do we try to value, like NPV of the pipeline, like customer value, like revenue, like cost of goods, and how do we change the way we operate and disrupt it? So we're always disrupting how we think, and I go back to what I said earlier, if you're going to transform an industry, you got to transform your core. You'll never get there without. So we actually do both of those, both with our customers and with internally the company, and we show that value continually, and we iterate and we test and learn. That's the other change that we had to make. You can't wait months to figure out how you're going to do something. You're always iterating, and you're creating an environment where you leverage that leadership, that culture, that change to be able to drive it and show the value and the learnings and move forward. So that's been a tremendous asset as we think about transformation holistically, tied to business strategy, to people, and to outcomes that really mean something to our business and our customers.
Great. Phil, I'm going to come back to you, and you mentioned something this morning about looking at some startups in Bangalore earlier this week, and innovation with scarcity. Yeah. Are you embracing the open innovation model, or are you trying to bring in these startups into your fold, or are you really looking at innovating everything yourself?
I think we're looking at all of that. I don't know that there's any one source for innovation. There simply isn't, and I think you've got to look very broadly to bring that into your company. You know, we were here earlier this week. We spent Monday and Tuesday in Bangalore and brought in about 10 different companies to meet with us that all played in different spaces. And I was struck by a couple of things. I was struck by how so many of the challenges that are being solved by these companies here in India are very, very relevant for what we have going on in the U.S. But I was also struck by what these teams had created with scarce resources. And my team will probably hate it because I would look and I'd say, how many people do you have working on this? And how many people do we have working on this? And so let's just say there was a big gap between the two numbers. But I think it's important to scour the world and to look at that innovation and to create an ecosystem where you look to disrupt and disintermediate not only yourself, but you look to bring those disruptions and those disintermediations from outside as well. I am particularly excited. I'm still excited from what we saw on Monday and Tuesday of what I think the promise of some of those companies can have. But then it also doesn't change our continued focus with Optum Technology on the innovations that they're driving. Those 3 examples I gave you are all being powered through Optum Technology and all being delivered through teams here. So you have to have some of both.
Great. Sebastian, talk a little bit about how consumption of technology has evolved and changed over the last 4 or 5 years, of how you used to consume tech on-prem versus on-demand versus large projects versus... What's the sense? And do you see that impacting your partners? Of course, this room's full of people who actually supported that journey over the last many years, but how is that evolving, and any advice for us?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, and I think everybody is working on it and to some extent also struggling with it and hasn't really cracked the nut of it, right? Because the traditional way of engaging on project-based outcomes with a finite start date and end date is no longer true. And so for us, this concept of digital platforms is very much leveraged of what we've seen in the internet-born first companies. And so it is more around sustainability. It is more about actually understanding the profit and the loss. And it is about tying down some standards and managing those standards with an increased engineering rigor. And so, to your question, that increased engineering rigor, be it security stacks, be it cloud, be it standards around ML, be it standards around mobile frameworks, we are needing to be built out by our partners, with our partners. And so it is a new game in that we need our partners to understand these technologies at a much deeper and more customized level than we ever did before. And so, that's why we're here in India. We're very excited also about what we're seeing, and we have a long, proud history of doing business here, and we'll continue to do that for sure.
Great. So I'm going to open up, the question and answer session to the audience, and maybe we'll take 3 or 4 questions. We have about 10 to 12 minutes to go. Please introduce yourself, and if you have a targeted question to any one of us, please let us know. Otherwise, one of us will answer.
Hi, Phil. It's a question primarily for you. You are sitting between 2 gentlemen, the stalwarts of 2 industries, which determine the food we eat and the air we breathe. And when they are better, it's good for your business too, because then people fall less sick, right? So therefore, what opportunity do you see to cross-collaborate across different industries, such that collectively we serve a much bigger cause, which is basically to keep the humans well and keep our planets well? And are such things happening now? My name is Kingshuk.
Can you just repeat the first part of your
You're sitting between people who decide what we eat and what we consume.
The air we breathe.
Okay. So, the last part of your question was the implications of that for.
And because when both of them are better, it's better for your business too, right? When people fall less sick, right? And therefore, what opportunity do you see to collaborate across the industries?
To collaborate.
So that, we see better health and ultimately better planet.
Yeah, so that's a really interesting question. And maybe one gentleman to my right versus my left may be an easier answer. So I'm going to take the easier one first and then come back here. So health is about food, right? And so when I think about our partnership with agriculture and you extend that through to diet, so much of, especially chronic illnesses are diet-related, right? Or the solutions, a non-pharmacological solution is diet. And so I think there's a huge partnership that we can play with the agriculture and the food industry. One of the things that we also see in the U.S. as it relates to food, depending on your community or geography, is how the access to food, is highly correlated to the levels of chronic disease, right? And so I see a great partnership there. When I think about the oil and gas industry, I'll give you an interesting parallel. It's an industry being disrupted based on changing perceptions and demands in our communities. And so I think what can be learned from oil and gas is how do you effectively respond to that disruption? How do you welcome that disruption into your environment and into your culture? You're also a highly, highly regulated industry. And how do you solve from within versus allowing the solutions to be applied to your industry? And so I think the combination of diet and its impact on health, highly relevant for our business. And I think how you continue to disrupt, how you continue to innovate in an industry perhaps with a high level of external focus, there's a lot to be learned there as well. Thank you.
Take one more question from the floor, and then we have some online questions.
Hi. This question is to Phil. How do you, when you have this accelerated digital journey, and you have very less number of IT team, that is of 300,000 employees, 20,000 or so, how did you change the culture to adapt this new or embrace this new paradigm?
Well, I think that culture change is more than just the technology team. I think that culture change exists across our entire business. And technology is a huge part of our business as well. And a lot of that gets driven through Optum Technology. But the role that Optum Tech plays with United Healthcare is that we both have to understand the change that's occurring in the industry. And I think we both have profoundly different perspectives or different points of view on how that change is occurring. So in United Healthcare, we see it from a product and a clinical perspective. And then we work closely with Optum and Optum Tech to make sure that we can deliver the right technology products or the right service products to meet that need. But we're actually very, very well aligned, I would say culturally and from an execution standpoint, on what that retailization, what that consumerization means for our business.
So Sebastian, we have a similar question on, for you from the app. It says, in such a structured and plan-driven industry, how do you encourage a culture of innovation? So similar to kind of the theme we had, because you talked about long-term, 50-year plan cycles. So how do you innovate in that mindset?
Well, I think it's first important to understand that we have actually been a tremendously innovative industry, right? If you take a look at the innovations that have happened in our core business around earth science, algorithms, high-performance computing, but also in our core, technologies like drilling, horizontal drilling, the shale revolution. I mean, it's been a tremendously innovative industry. But I agree that this is maybe a different ballgame, and we have certainly reacted to that. We've reacted to it by setting up a small team that's actually very much focused on business workflow, iteration and innovation, as well as introducing an innovation culture in our business that is more willing to take risks, that is more willing to fail fast, and that overall has better and more critical thinking than what we have today in a very process-oriented, company culture. So that's number one. Number two is we do have a venture arm. We have a very active venture arm that is active in scanning technologies that continuously brings startups within the Chevron system on a worldwide basis, and we learn a lot and we innovate a lot, through that. And then finally, it is about culture change. And it is about, from the very top down, setting a different tone and allowing, different performance management systems, allowing, more creative thinking and structuring of projects and that nature. And so I think the combination of those three things, having an office that's responsible for it, having a very active venture arm, and having a culture change that is driven by the CEO will help us to accelerate this innovation culture.
Phil, we have another one for you, which talks about the ecosystem to come together and adopt products for better health services. And I think I'll just throw in the earlier discussion we had about new alliances being formed to actually solve the healthcare problem in the U.S. Of course, we saw 3 Fortune 50 companies coming together. Any thoughts on that?
I think there's a lot of opportunity for the healthcare ecosystem to come together and do better. I'd maybe reframe that and say, are individuals ready for the system to come together? And I think the answer there is yes. And that's what we're trying to respond to is how do we respond to our consumer expectations of us as a business? You mentioned some of the recent partnerships. I think what you're seeing is increased consumer demand for better products and a better coordination in the healthcare ecosystem. And whether the system is ready or not, I think, is irrelevant. I think it's something that we simply have to respond to.
Jim, there's one other item that we didn't touch upon that I thought would be very relevant, especially in the business you're in. Talk to us a little bit about how you're embracing the connected devices explosion, and of course that has a big element of data in it, and how that is helping you. I mean, you talked a little bit about doing the analytics before you actually, cutting down the cycle times, but, just talk to us about the IoT impact on your industry.
Yeah, so that's a big part of where we see our data volume and growth. And it's not just data we're seeing coming off of a field. It's structural data, it's imaging data, it's satellite data. It's a whole bunch of different data sets that we're connecting. And we're doing a lot more analytics at the edge. And we're in pretty some remote geographies. And so you could be in a field in Brazil where you're trying to actually create value by actually getting more insight to how a grower is, their practices, what's going over the combine, what they're putting into the ground, what they're applying, and using all those insights to provide a prescription to that individual grower. And so this idea of hyper-personalization, having a connected environment, is really critical. So we talk about some of our strategies like a connected supply chain, or a predictive pipeline, or enhanced customer value. We need to continue to develop that data, access that data, and then feed a closed loop that comes back in, put a seed in the ground, how did it perform, get that information to accelerate our pipeline, our product supply, as well as our customer value. So we've done a lot in our IoT space to be able to connect those devices. We've done a ton in analytics. We actually measure how many models are applied to business decisions, feed it through all that data, and we constantly iterate on that to evolve all aspects of that, of the supply chain and the environment that we're doing, from research to customers to agronomic practices, and we have a big focus on sustainability. How do you reduce the inputs to maximize the output? So we're continually connecting the environments and doing a lot more with analytics and driving high value for our customers and growers around the world.
Great. So we have a couple more minutes left. So what I'm going to do is maybe just find a wrap up. Maybe one last question, and then we can do a quick wrap up. Mike here? No, there's none here.
Hi, my name is Deepak, and this question is for Sebastian. Sebastian, there are some macroeconomics trends which are going on in your industry. Trends like moving away from hydrocarbon-based energy sources to renewable energy sources, the environmental issues, and the renewable energy sources. So how are you able to leverage the technology to help carve out the strategies which help in terms of responding to these macroeconomics trends?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think Phil kind of alluded to it. I mean, I think first of all, we need all forms of energy, and I think as you stated, it is a much better strategy to go after it, incorporate it into your business model than to wait and stand on the sidelines. And so there is quite a lot that we're doing. We have invested in a lot of those technologies from a carbon capture perspective, but also from some of the new business models that are evolving from a strategic data source generation, as well as understanding consumer behavior more on our retail station and power business. And so it is a significant portion of our strategy, digital strategy, that goes after those kinds of opportunities as well.
Thank you.
So I think, thank you guys for such an amazing interactive session. I'm just going to maybe, if you can have the PowerPoint back up, just summarize, and then we can quickly do the... Can we have the slide back on? I think I'm going to bring it together. Basically, the same message that I started with. We have to be the architects of our own disruption. And I think the focus on innovation culture, we talked a lot about that. The focus on the consumer, keep the consumer in the middle, then start working backwards towards it. Iterative, fail-fast solutions, and finally, I think, creating ecosystems. So with that, I'd like to really, really thank all my panelists. Really appreciate your time for being here, for giving us these insights, and thanks for being an amazing audience.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. Nitin, I'm going to ask you to hand over tokens of our appreciation to all of our speakers. Interesting thoughts and perspectives on how businesses are getting embedded in technology and how they're adapting to this change. Please put your hands together for all those insights and anecdotes that came through this session.
Thank you, Sebastian. Amazing. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. I know we're running a little late for lunch, and I know we've kept you, but the session was really worth it. So if you can all stand for a photograph. James, if you can just join us and just quickly get one picture. In the meanwhile, can we have the video for the next break?